to call.
Good morning, High-10 George Realty, High-10 Partners. This is session 2 of the RPA, and I realize there's a lot of meat, so we will flow over into next week. Somebody was asking me when we're going to do the new forms. This is going to be continual, probably for the next month. I'm going to be, after we complete these sessions, I'm going to be writing into the new forms. We've already gone over the RPA, so if there's changes, you're already going to be aware of them. So I am going to share my screen and get going on the RPA where we left off. Okay, let me get situated here so I can see. Okay. So here's where we left off last week at paragraph 11, statutory disclosures. So what are the statutory disclosures? These are your TDS. If you follow along right here, it's the TDS, the NHD. You also have other things that you need to disclose, such as Mello-Roos and things of these natures here. These are usually in your TDS report. So it's outlining what is required. In your in the NHD report. So I wanted to go into the transfer disclosure statement a little bit more, who's exempt and those kind of things. So if you look at paragraph 2 here, when is the TDS considered completed? The reason we're always after you to check that box at the top, because by contract and by statute, it's not completed until you check a box in section 1. I do have the TDS attached. We're going to go over that as a refresher, not just for you, but for me too. And that the seller has completed all the questions in section 2, and that the agent has completed their space in section 3. And if applicable, which it is applicable to our company, we do require an AVID. It's car form AVID. So I am going to switch now to show you those sections that the contract is referencing so we don't get confused. So if a box is not checked here, this is deemed incomplete. So you always come to section, okay, the date here, make sure you put a date in when the seller executes. So when the seller signs this is the date of this report. So on section 1, coordination with other disclosure forms, generally you're going to be checking no substituted disclosures to this transfer. Let's say you had something that you really wanted to put in, like an additional inspection report. You would check this box and detail out here what it is. But usually you're just going to check no substituted disclosures for this transfer, unless there's something that you really need to incorporate. And if it's something you were going to do and you need advice on that, please talk to Peter and I. We'll look everything over with you, okay? So they're talking about this section here needs to be completed. And of course, the seller's information section. Please don't forget to check if they're occupying the property or not. This is the seller's responsibility. We do not fill any of this out for them, and they're going to sign and date it. This date here, when they complete it, will be the date on the first page, because that's when this report was completed.
Do we hand them this, or do we just, how do we do this for them to, we just give them this and have them check?
Yeah, normally you would have it with you on the listing agreement, on the listing appointment, but like as I always say, get your listing. Don't overwhelm people with so much where they're ready to pass out, right? Because it's a lot.
Or I as an agent.
Right. So what you want to do first is focus on getting your listing agreement signed, and you want to say, hey, I have disclosures that we're going to need, so may I come back tomorrow or the next day? Schedule out that appointment right away and get these done. It'll make your life easier for when you start fielding offers, okay? We do like it all at once, but sometimes it's not possible to do everything at once. So go back in a day or two and get everything else done. So the other portion that needs to be completed for the TDS to be complete per the contract in the civil code If there is an agent, they need to complete this. So you see here, this is the broker representing the seller, which will be Coldwell Banker, High 10 Partners, Inc., or High 10 George Realty. We DBA is that for residential. So normally here, we just advise you to click this box right here, see attached AVID form. So make sure that when you go back the next day or the day after that you have your AVID with you, okay? So click this box. That's all you have to do, and sign and date. We do have a great training coming up at the end of the month by Robert Brand, and it's titled Staying Out of Court. But what he goes over is the appropriate way to be filling out the AVID. So all of us should come. I've probably seen him speak 10 times now, and I learned something every single time. So we have him scheduled. So it's great that he's coming. Okay. And then the buyer's agent, the same thing. They will be filling this out. And however their broker directs them, that's their business. But for us, we prefer you to click the AVID report. Okay. And then once all of that's done up there, everybody's, they're going to acknowledge that they have a copy, the buyer and the seller. And the agents, when you filled out that top, you should have been already signing and dating this, okay? So I also pulled up the quick guides for the TDS overviews. So who's required to provide a TDS? It's property sellers of real properties consisting of 4 or fewer residential dwelling units, so 1 to 4 units. Also, just so we always remember that it is required on a mobile home, but it's called an MHTDS. So CAR has made a TDS for mobile homes, okay? So the seller should provide this TDS as soon as practical, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead of myself. The seller shall provide a TDS even if they are selling without an agent. So, that's hard for sellers because they probably wouldn't know that. So that's a good way to prospect. Like, I'll take care of your disclosures and making sure you have the right disclosures when you're prospecting people.
Michelle,
Yes.
I don't know that stuff.
if a seller does a sale by owner, will the escrow company get involved as telling the seller you're missing a TDS, or
No,
that's just he's taking a big chance?
they're taking a chance
Okay.
because escrow stays in their lane
Exactly.
and seller has to stay in their lane, which is to provide the appropriate disclosures, which some people would be sophisticated enough. Let's say if it's a huge investor, attorney, somebody that has some heavy real estate background, but most sellers may not know this. So
They don't.
it's a great way to prospect and educate people of what we can offer them. And how do sellers comply with the TDS law? So it is a statutory form, and the language is available in the CAR forms. That's why CAR is so important, because they've already lined it out the way that the statutory requirement by law is. When should it be provided? When should you be giving this TDS? As soon as practical. But the TDS per contract is required within 7 days after acceptance. But I want you to keep in mind, and I forgot about this, if the buyer receives the TDS after execution of their offer, then the buyer has 3 days or 5-day period to cancel the transaction. So you'll see some listing agents will provide the statutory disclosures with a counter. That's why, because they want them to review it. So they have 3 days if it was handed in person, and 5 days email or mail. So to cancel. So if you want to be really nip it, then you nip down that time. You could certainly provide it with your counter offer, or provide it all of the statutory. So just keep that in mind. TDS cannot be waived by the buyer. Okay. So if somebody says, I don't need that, an investor, because I'm ripping it down or whatever, no, they can't waive it. Okay. And yes, the seller needs to provide it. So who's exempt from this TDS? So here's the exemptions here. I tell you, if you guys explore around on car.org, all of these quick guides are marvelous. So who's exempt? transfers pursuant to court orders, transfer by foreclosure, transfers between fiduciaries in the course of administration of an estate, guardianship, conservatorship, or trust. And you note here, an exception to this exemption occurs when the property is held in a revocable trust and the trustee is a natural person who is also either the former owner of the property or was an occupant or in possession within the year preceding. So if that's the case, they're not, they won't be exempt. So if you read down this, transfers from one co-owner to the other, between grandchild, parent, or direct ancestor, or, read through these. These are really important transfers as a result of failure to pay taxes, transfers or exchanges from a government entity. For example, if you've ever done foreclosure work in the past, there probably wasn't any TDS, okay? Because they're not required. So I just wanted to point these out to you because I think these are great. These quick guides are so helpful to all of us. And it's all on CAR. It's in car.org.
Do you know the pathway?
There's a little search bar on the upper right side, and you put quick guides and it'll populate. And then you can look through all of the quick guides there.
Cool.
So, okay.
I know there's a place where each form tells you what it is, and it breaks down, and then you hover over and it'll tell you what the explanation is on that one.
Yes, yeah. So you're also required to provide an SPQ and answer, and the seller will answer those questions. We don't do it for them and deliver it to the buyer. If there's any material facts that they become aware of, you can either amend the TDS or amend the SPQ. And that must be done if you hear of anything that material affects the property during the course of escrow, you need to amend or disclose it. So make sure that you're aware of that. You could even, probably do an email, but I like it better if you amend the actual form because I think it's more protective of you, the agents, and the brokerages involved. So sometimes people say, oh, I emailed them. Can you please do a formal amendment with signatures of both buyer and seller on it? Because we do hear that where, oh, I just emailed it. Yeah, let's do it where the buyer and seller need to sign this additional material disclosure. Okay.
Where would we do the amendment? Where would we do the modifying? Would it be on an SPQ or in a...
It's either so there's questions, you could highlight it and then put an attachment and have everybody sign that question number blah blah is hereby modified to state, and then change what the answer was or give the explanation of the material fact. Even if it's not tied to a question and there is a material fact that comes up, you can still amend the TDS because the TDS asks for material facts of the property. You can amend that box that says any other material facts to disclose, then you can amend the TDS, okay? But I want them, even if you amend the TDS, remember, just because they signed it before, we need new signatures, right? We can't just, write it in and then call it macaroni. We need the new signatures that everybody saw the new amendment, okay?
Everything that's modified.
Signed again, yeah, just so that there's a tracking process that we've provided that material fact. So lead disclosures, the lead-based disclosure for any residential properties built before January 1, 1978. Okay, so there is the CAR form LPD, we use that. Also remember to give them the lead-based pamphlet, the lead disclosures pamphlet, please. And those come electronically and you can just attach it to your email with your disclosures. What I do is I attach the earthquake booklet and the lead pamphlet all in one so that they've got it with the disclosures and those booklets attached, okay? So buyer has the opportunity within the contingency period time to conduct a risk assessment, and so they can look for the presence of lead-based paint if they so desire. Home fire hardening disclosure and advisory. For any transaction where a TDS is required and a property is located in a higher, very high fire zone. How do we know that? When we have our NHD, big lettering tells you at the very front of the report if it's located in a higher, very high fire zone. At that point, you have to provide the CAR form FHDS. That will also cover the defensible space disclosure and addendum. So C and D, you see it's referencing FHDS form, will be covered on that form, okay? So look to your NHD report. That's why we always tell you to order them early. Now, what if you're the buyer's agent and you're not able to get it? Call one of our NHD providers, one of our affiliates, and ask them to check for you to see if the property's in a high or very high fire zone, just so you're mentally prepared. You're not going to be filling out the FHDS, the seller will be, okay? But just if you don't know and you're waiting for that NHD, you can certainly call and find out, okay? So this was interesting. I guess I never really read this till today. So see, I'm learning too as we go along. This electrical system inspection advice disclosure for any transaction where a TDS is required. The seller is advising the buyer that they should obtain an inspection. It's advisable by a qualified probably electrician of the electricity system, the service panel, things of that nature, sub panels. So this right here is advising from the seller to the buyer to go ahead and have all that inspected. You know, you might even still see in some houses, which I saw 2 years ago, that old knob and tube wiring, you know, so people would want to know about that. It may affect insurance, okay?
Is that something new?
No, I don't, well, you know, I don't know how new it is, but I know that every time they make changes, this is not part of that, but they add things to protect us.
So I don't remember anybody doing an electrical inspection except for the regular home inspection.
Home inspection, yeah.
Well, okay, so you don't really bring an electrician. Initially, you're going to do your home inspection, right? And then the home inspector is going to call out, hey, this is an old panel, or this is knob and tube, or, you know, whatever they're noticing, because they're not usually not going to be a licensed electrician. So it's going to reference in that report, the home inspection report, to recommend to get an electrician. So you can always get an electrician and have them look. You can have them do it prior to the home inspection, whatever you need to do. But here's the advisory from the buyer, the seller to the buyer on it. Okay?
Is there a separate form they need to sign or?
No,
No. Okay.
no. But when you have the electrician out there, if they provide you a report, give us a copy with the buyer's acknowledgement and signature on it, okay? Because if they went to the expense of having an electrician, they probably had a concern. So we want that report and we want it signed by the buyer, please. So you cannot, waiver is prohibited by law of the statutory disclosures, lead, and other statutory disclosures, okay? Return of signed copies of all of these disclosures 5 days after delivery of any disclosure. So if you're late, okay, let's say you delivered them on the 15th day of a 17-day contingency, you've given them 3 extra days, because once you deliver, they have 5 days to review them. So that's why I recommend that you go out. If you can't get it at the listing because it's too much, go out and get them the day within 2 days after, so that you have all of your disclosures ready, so you're not giving extra contingency days. Okay. So termination rights, statutory and other disclosures. If the disclosure is, the buyer has a right to rescind the contract or to terminate it, right? Like I told you. So if they are not satisfied with the TDS, if it's delivered after signing of the offer, then they can automatically cancel within 3 to 5 days, okay? So we just need to remember that. Defensible space compliance, this is important. So the seller will have one way of filling it out and maybe the buyer doesn't agree, right? So right here, they're adding a clause on that defensible space compliance. If the buyer does not agree to the terms regarding the defensible space compliance, that would be on the FHDS delivered by the seller. Then the seller, after first delivering a notice to buyer to perform, may cancel this agreement. Always remember when canceling, always have notice to perform, notice to perform, notice to perform in your head. And even if there's no money in escrow, we can't just cancel, right? Notice to perform, notice to perform, notice to perform. There's no escrow because there's no money. There is an escrow. You have an escrow number. You've assigned it to an escrow company. I'm talking more to listing agents. You know, you need to cancel the right way with a notice to perform. Okay, so withholding taxes, the buyer and the seller instruct the escrow holder to withhold the applicable and required taxes, federal taxes, franchise tax board taxes, whatever's applicable, and forward them to the IRS. We normally don't get involved in this. We do ask in all your deals that we be provided with a copy of FERPTA, which comes out of escrow. But there's where it's saying that the buyer and seller are giving escrow the authority to, it's usually based on the forms that the seller or buyer fills out, then escrow will proceed with collecting whatever is necessary on withholding taxes. We are not involved in that. We do not fill out their tax form. Please don't, because you could make a big boo-boo. They should go to their own CPA and fill it out with their CPA, not with us, okay? Megan's Law database, it's right here. It's giving them the website for them to check, okay? So it is required with pursuant to this penal code that be provided. And right here, it says neither the seller nor agent are required to check the website. If the buyer wants further information, the agent recommends that the buyer obtain the information from this website during the buyer's investigation contingency period. We do not have expertise in this area. So please don't check websites for people. Let them do it themselves because you may look at something differently than they look at it. Let the buyer check the websites themselves. And then there's another website here. Notice regarding gas and hazardous liquid transmission pipelines. I'm thinking that's on the NHD too. I'll have John Wax confirm that. But you also have, they can check a website here too. This is a website for them to check for any of this information. And it says right here, if the buyer wants further information on this, that the agent recommends that the buyer obtain the information from the website during their inspection contingency, okay? So these are two websites that are the buyer's responsibility to check. They will not know that these are there unless we tell them. So you can tell them they can look at these websites if they have questions on these particular line items, okay?
This is if we're representing the seller or the buyer?
The buyer,
The buyer.
yeah. Because it's saying that the agent is recommending the buyer to check the websites because we don't have the expertise. Okay?
That might be what Jim was talking about a couple weeks ago. I can think of the name, that gas that,
Yeah,
I can think.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you check with your NHD provider, but also check the buyer, not you, can check with the website. Okay?
Michelle,
Yes.
is it our obligation to explain to the potential buyer all those information?
It's your, okay.
I mean, like.
I'll let Peter jump in on that, but in my mind, it is your obligation. You have a fiduciary to your client to competently represent them and explain the contract should they need it, right? So
What was the question, Michelle?
he said, Paxton wants to know, are we as agents obligated to explain all this? And my answer is, yeah, we have a fiduciary. What's your answer?
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
We do.
I mean, that I do understand, but we're not obligated to actually go into those websites.
No.
And say, okay,
That's why there's a disclaimer there that we don't do it. but you're obligated to be competent on the contract under your fiduciary duties to your client. But we're always here to help you, okay? And that's why this session is going to be now extended to 3 sessions, because I feel like there's a lot in this contract. If we just look at it paragraph by paragraph, sure, I can do the grid all day long within a half hour, but this is really the meat of the contract, is looking at these contracts. When you know where things are, or you remember, hey, I think I read that in the contract, then you're going to feel more confident in your ability to dance inside the contract, to assist your clients, to know where to find the information. So I know this is long and it may be tedious, but I think it's important so that we're exposed to these clauses in the contract. Okay, so natural and environmental hazards. Okay, this is about the earthquake guide. So the seller shall deliver the earthquake guide and environmental hazard booklet for all residential properties, 1 to 4 units, manufactured or mobile home built before January 1, 1960. And they need to make sure that you deliver the booklet. Okay, whether it's built in 1960 or not, we still, at this brokerage, we deliver the booklet. Maybe we don't deliver the form with all the check boxes of, where they're checking off the form about earthquake, but we always deliver the booklet, and there is a receipt for that booklet. So regardless, we're always going to deliver that booklet, okay? And then
we get it off our website, right?
Yeah, we have it on the website, the most updated one with the document to sign, that the seller needs to sign it, that they're transmitting it to the buyer, and the buyer needs to sign receipt, okay?
That's the George Realty website?
Yes. But if you have any problems, always come and I'll help you out.
So like the lead and the earthquake, both of them are on the website.
Yes, the pamphlet for lead and the earthquake booklet is on our website. And as we're moving along in here, I will be pulling up the website. It's just that right now I feel like this is the most important. And if you can't find it on the website, give me a call. I'll help you. Okay? Condominium plan development disclosures. We always tell you to mention to the seller to go ahead and get those, the CC&Rs over right away. Right here is a list of what the seller needs to provide via the HOA. Will be providing it to the buyer. So if there's any, they need to have disclosure of any pending or anticipated claims or litigation against the HOA, a statement containing the location and number of designated parking and storage spaces. Now that makes me think there's a car form for that. So you can use the car form if you can't find that in the HOA docs, okay? So here's a list of what the HOA should be providing your buyer. Get familiar with it. That's why I've put marks here. It's right in this area. It's going to tell you all the things that the HOA should be providing. If you don't see it, call the HOA or ask escrow to assist you in obtaining what is contractually required. Okay? Yes. Solar power systems. I am so glad that they have this car form solar now. So for properties with solar panels or systems, the seller needs to provide this questionnaire and advisory form called SOLAR. It gives them information about the contract, if it's fully paid for. Make sure when you're listing that you have that information. Get the contract from the seller so that you have that copy to provide to escrow, and the buyer, okay? You want the contracts, because even if there's a system paid off, which I found through the School of Hard Knocks, there still could be a requirement for up to X amount of years that homeowner buys their electricity through that company. So I just want you guys to be aware of that, because I learned that through Hard Knocks. I did not know that because the thing was paid off until we took a deep dive and researched it. Okay.
And it wasn't paid off?
It was paid off,
Oh.
but they were still a few years left that the homeowner, whoever it transferred to, was still required to buy their energy through that company. Okay. So make sure that you you're not a lawyer on these contracts, but you do provide that to the other side quickly, okay? So, and if they have questions, of course, they can seek legal counsel on those particular contracts because there's a lot of legalese written into them. And our job is to provide the information and they can seek legal counsel if they need it, okay? Balconies, exterior stairways, and other elevated elements. So for properties with any building containing 3 or more dwelling units with elevated balconies, stairways, or other elements, the seller needs to provide the CAR form WBSA and comply with its terms, which is wooden balcony and stairs addendum, okay? And here's the known material facts. So the seller shall let the buyer know and disclose any known or material facts affecting the property. What they're saying here in the time specified in the contingency period. But as we said, if you find out something after that, you still need to be disclosing it and amending the appropriate document to disclose. Okay. So buyer's investigation of property and matters affecting the property. So the buyer will have an inspection period. I think it's good to let them have their inspection period because sometimes it gets cut so short, right? Maybe they say 7 days. What if you can't get your inspectors out in time and receive the reports back? So I like a little bit longer. I don't like anything under 12 days, but that's up to your negotiation. Okay. So what is included in this clause here? A general home inspection, an inspection of lead-based paint and other lead-based paint hazards if they want to get an inspector out on that, and also the wood-destroying pests and organisms. So go ahead and get the termite inspection with your home inspection. I get that question a lot. Even if you did not write that in the offer, you have a right to get that inspected at the home inspection. It outlines that in the contract. Remember, if you're representing somebody on a townhome condo where the exterior is handled by the HOA, it's only the interior inspection. And it says it in here, but I like to put that in the counter. If they've asked for it, I will put interior inspection only for the termite, okay? Because you don't want to get into a tussle back and forth, like, hey, you didn't do this or that. So you need to make sure that you stipulate if it's a condo or townhome that the HOA is taking care of the outside, that inspection shall only uncover the interior, which is very common. Everybody that sells a lot knows that.
Who's supposed to pay for this inspection? If they don't request it? Or
So who pays? If you don't request it, the buyer is going to pay for the termite inspection when they are doing their home inspection or a day, different days, but during their contingency period. Now, on the request for repair, there's a section where you attach the termite report and the buyer requests the seller to pay for section 1, section 2, or just section 1. Normally, we're only asking for section 1 for the seller to cover that, okay? So that's how you work that. It is a negotiation.
or the balcony inspection?
That's a negotiation, but usually the seller, yeah.
Usually the seller.
Yeah. Remember, this is new, right? Right, Peter, this balcony inspection?
Yes, this is totally new, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
so,
in 2026 starting this year.
We can't get a regular home inspector no, we gotta get a special contractor or.
yeah, they're the
Yeah,
home,
for the HOA, you have to have a special inspector for inspection.
HOA,
You're right.
yeah. Because the home inspectors, they're not going to take liability for that, right? That's a special inspection. Okay.
Then you have to request that the HOA to do the inspection or they know. But they have to do it.
They know they have to do it, but you still need to be diligent for your client and make sure, well, let me say they should know they have to do it. So be diligent and this is why we're going over this, because we have a high level of competency here, right? So we know that, so we're going to make sure that we get evidence of that. Okay, so you want that evidence, okay?
I think as I recall, as I remember, the HOA does provide something saying that we did do inspections, not on that particular property that you're trying to sell, but they do it overall. So they'll have they'll have something that, we did an inspection and we did it a year ago or something like that.
Yeah, you have to have evidence, that's why we're going over the contract, so we all know what we're looking for. And what I was talking about, the condo, if a property is a unit in a condo or other common interest subdivision, the inspection on the termite shall include only the separate interest, okay? And not include common areas.
So it's just that one.
So it is in the contract, but I guess if it's already there, you don't really have to counter it, but I like to mention to the other agent, because I don't want to be, back and forth on this. Like, you realize it's only the interior because the HOA is responsible for the exterior and common areas. Okay, so just make sure they're aware of that. So the buyer investigations, of course, do not include insurance, flood insurance, or fire insurance. Insurance is something we jump on right away. We know that. They're just telling you here that it's not included. And without the seller's written consent, you can't make any damage or invasive inspections on the property. And I like this right here. You see this? It says inspections by any governmental building or zoning inspector or government employee unless required by law. So without the seller's consent, you can't say, hey, I'm going to get the city to come over and check that room. You can't do that unless there's a consent by the seller. Okay? So it's right here in the contract.
Which one is that?
This is C. It says without the seller's consent, you cannot cause an inspection by any governmental building or zoning inspector or employee unless it's like a 9A report or something that's required by law. If cities have pre-sale inspection reports, sure, but you can't just say, oh, I'm going to get somebody from the city to come over. No, you can't do that unless it's a pre-sale report, 9A, something that's required by law. Okay?
Yeah.
That was C, Michelle?
That's C2.
C2.
Yeah. And the seller should make the property available to the buyer for their inspections. However, the seller is not obligated to move any existing or personal property. The seller will have the water, gas, electricity, and all pilot lights on for the buyer's investigation and leave all of that on through the date the possession is delivered to the buyer. Okay, so remember that, okay, that they need to have all of this on.
So basically, once they transfer over, then they have to transfer over the.
Yeah, and I think it's really good service as listing agents, we get used to saying, hey, can I get the last copy of your utility bills, even down to who they're getting their TV service through, their whatever. And you can type a nice little list and send it to the buyer's agent, because they can do the seller can do what they call a soft close. They can call the utility companies and say, as of this date, when you know your close date for sure, please close out the utilities. The buyer can already have called in and had that open in their name, the day that it's closing. Okay. So I think not only knowing the contract, but doing these little niceties of giving the list and trying to help the other agent, people will remember you. So will the buyer. They're going to remember the great service you provided because they're going to know. Okay. So I think we should do all of that just as a habit. Okay.
Yeah, let me emphasize the importance of disclosure, all this in this RPA. The RPA is very comprehensive in telling you all the statutory disclosure, the general disclosure. So you should remember it by heart, you know. And if you do, then the information will flow very smoothly when you present it to the client, and then you kind of have the you can get that the trust much better. And also that will prevent you from getting to a lawsuit. As you know, that 70% of the lawsuits are from disclosures. So you really should study that and make it part of your memory, you know?
Yeah, I agree. You know, there's a way to tackle this giant document. When I was new, I would just sit at night with a highlighter and I would just have a bunch of blanks and I would start highlighting. If I didn't understand something, I would march into my broker where I used to work and say, I don't understand what this is talking about. So if you keep doing that over and over, you get to be pretty good on these contracts of you don't remember exactly, but you know you saw it and you can put your finger on it. Okay.
Yeah.
It's really important.
And I know that ChatGPT can help you by saying, give me an easy breakdown for the client on certain things, and they will help you break it down.
Oh, really? I've never done that. Oh, okay.
ChatGPT.
ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm. The app
Uh-huh.
where you need to write stuff and it'll help you correct certain things. But yeah, there's a way where it can, where you can ask to do certain things and it will help you out, you know, it will describe it and stuff like that.
So when the buyer is having inspections on the property there to keep the property free and clear of liens, let's say they were saying, oh, okay, let me just think of an example. Okay, it's an FHA or VA buyer where there's some lender required repairs, but the seller says, but they have to have the repairs in order to close escrow, which I think is risky for the buyer side to do it. But at any rate, the buyer says, Mr. Seller, I'm going to do this. There is a notice of non-responsibility that the seller can file so that they're not responsible for paying whoever that contractor was, and everybody's notified of that. So that's all I want to point out on this paragraph, okay? So if you're ever in the position where the buyer has to do some work, you know, on the property prior to owning it, make sure that you're aware of this notice of non-responsibility to protect your seller. These are, like Peter said, these are all things that are going to gain trust because you know this. Okay?
Yep.
Title investing preliminary title report. The buyer needs to be provided the current preliminary title report. So the condition of the title, you're going to take a look at all easements, encumbrance, anything on that title report, and you're going to ask the title company, whether you're the listing agent or not, you're going to call into that title company, talk to the unit that it's on the right-hand side who has that title order, and you're going to ask for plotted easements. It is free. Get that, please, for your buyer. Get the plotted easements. It's free. All you got to do is call in. It should take a day. That plotted easement map will come back to you. Okay? So when you get the preliminary title report, you're going to click all the hyperlinks, the blue links. You're going to send your client the report that has the blue link because you want them, and you explain to them that they can click and look at the underlining documents. Okay? There are properties that have weird old HOAs. If you click, you'll see them. There's some in Arcadia that are super old and outdated. So take a look at all the hyperlinks. Call the title company, not only for the plotted easements, but even if I think the title's clean, I'm not an expert on it, and I freely admit that, but I will call that title officer's unit and I'll say, can you go over this title report and tell me if there's anything that I should be mindful of or anything that's a red flag? Even if I don't see anything, I'm going to ask them and I'm going to have them look at it. They will do it immediately and talk to you on the phone about it. Okay?
Or as for the plotted,
Plotted easements. You ask them to email you that. It's free. So I won't go in too much into this federal reporting requirement, geographic targeting order. So it's the purchase price is at least 300 and made in cash without a bank loan or similar form of external financing. Then there is a requirement by title to report to the U.S. Department of Treasury certain information about the buyer. Okay?
Yeah,
And-
this paragraph is going to change pretty soon because
Okay.
the new law in Vincent will
Replaces
take
it?
effect maybe in March or April. So
So that's the replacement for this paragraph?
yeah, that's the replacement for it.
Okay, see, we learn every day. So that will be replaced sometime in March. With that FinCEN, we had that training, remember?
Yeah.
Seller delivery of information. You have 7 days after request to give escrow holder necessary information to clear the title. Okay. After close of escrow, the recorded grant deed will be mailed to the buyer. Okay. And title insurance, this is our last paragraph because I know this is long, so I'm cutting off after this, and then the third, we'll wrap up on the third training. So the buyer is going to receive an Alta homeowner's policy or equivalent policy. So if an Alta homeowner's policy of title is not offered, buyer shall receive the CLTA. I will have a title officer explain all of that. Again, I'm not expert on it. I'm just telling you what the contract says. I'll have at one of our 15-minute meetings on Monday, I will have a title officer address the differences. Unless Peter knows, I don't know them. So I don't want to take a guess on them. So we'll get that addressed on a affiliate spotlight, the differences between those two policies.
Alta and the CLT.
Yes. Okay, so I know that was a lot. We are stopping here. Is there any questions? Okay, I'm going to stop.
Good session for
Oh, good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so next week we're going to conclude the RPA, and we will keep flowing into the new forms and everything else that you need to do. Again, please feel free to contact Peter or I. We're always here for you. And let's do some good deals and some great learning together. And you're not alone at High 10 Partners. We are always with you. We will support you through your transactions in whatever way you need. Okay? So have a great weekend, and thank you all. Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
You sure you have